Hey everybody, what's up? Welcome into another edition of Straight Facts Homie. Trey Wingo here with you, the podcast where we don't yell at you, we don't tell you our feelings or opinions, we just give you the information to make you a smarter and more well-tuned and informed sports fan. You know, we are in the midst of another college football season. We are off and running, and a lot of the big-name schools are right where we thought they would be, right at the top of the top 25, including a school that a few years ago took a chance on an assistant from a really, really good program at Georgia, and that turned out to be the exact right call. Since getting to Eugene and becoming the head coach at the University of Oregon, Dan Lanning has absolutely killed it for the Ducks, and once again, he's got them in prime position to make the college football playoff and make some noise during that playoff. So for this week's trusted voice, please enjoy the conversation we have with Oregon head football coach Dan Lanning. Delighted to be joined now in Straight Facts Homie by the head coach of Oregon football, Dan Lanning. Dan, I guess is the hardest part about your job right now the fact that every time there's a rumor that someone's going to get fired or someone does get fired, it's like, well, Dan Lanning should get this job.
Not anymore. No, I think I've proven that I'm not interested in being anywhere else but here. This place has been really great for me, and anytime you're in the conversation, that means that something's going right where you're at, and I certainly recognize that something's going right because of where I'm at and who I'm with and the people I'm around. So, no, there's a lot of other things about this job that are a lot harder than that.
But it is funny. Like every time someone's off to a bad start, Dan Lanning might be available. Like how many times do you have to politely say, guys, I'm not leaving?
Yeah, well, I'll say it again. Yeah, not leaving. Love this place. I've said it several times before. I love, my kids. I made a commitment when we came here. I've got kids that have lived in 8 different states. And when you tell them, hey, you're going to graduate from the same middle school, the same high school, as long as your dad wins enough games, right? That's the key word. And we have. So this is where we'll be.
Well, listen, that's important because I get it. My kids went through after traveling around a lot to start my career. My kids got through elementary school, middle school, and high school. So
huge win.
That you're right. It is. It's a huge thing that people don't ever think about when they talk about. Oh, just move this guy over here, move this guy over there. That's never part of the equation. So, what was it about the Oregon job that made that one the right one for you when you were a hot coordinator at Georgia?
I think there's some luck involved for me, right? Because you don't know everything. You don't know that it's going to be exactly what you hoped it would be. And I've been lucky in the sense that it has been. Now, from afar, what did I recognize about this place? They were always on the cutting edge. They were invested in being a great program. They had unbelievable fan support. You can go anywhere in the nation and they recognize the brand of the O. So I think, honestly, I got really lucky when I got here. And then there's some small things that we changed and said, okay, let's adapt this in a different way. Let's change the way we do this. And there was really a kind of a process in place and an administration that I absolutely love working with to where all my boxes were checked. And I probably didn't know that until I got here and really got to experience it firsthand.
Yeah. By the way, to that point about luck, people just sort of need to understand that is part of the equation here because it looked for a while like you were going maybe to be the head coach at Kansas, and that would have been a great opportunity for you. This turned out to be a better opportunity, right? So sometimes the luck thing does matter.
100%. 100%. There were opportunities, you didn't realize opportunities. You mentioned one, but there were opportunities that didn't necessarily come your way. You realized the blessing that was as well, in this process. And certainly wasn't the first opportunity or first position that I interviewed for in my time as a coordinator, but it's the right one. And I got the right one, and our family loves it here. It's getting better. The job's gotten better since I've gotten here, and that's a lot of credit to our players and our staff and the support that we've received. And we hope that it's going to be even better until I could get to coach my final game at Oregon at some point, that it's a way better product than when I first arrived.
Well, listen, that's you're 39. We
got
a long way to go, bro. Okay, we got a long way to go before we have to worry about that. How much did where you came from prepare you for this job? Because you came from some of the greatest coaching trees out there in terms of the staffs that you got to work with and the guys that were on staffs with Nick Saban and so on and so forth.
There's very few days that go by in my job where I don't sit and say to myself, okay, what would Nick do? All right, what would Kirby do? What would Mike Norvell do? What would Todd Graham do? Like the guys that I've worked for absolutely prepared me for this opportunity. And I was lucky enough to be exposed to a lot of different experiences, whether it's working at a group of 5 program like Memphis, working at an FCS program like Sam Houston State, working at a place like Alabama, Georgia, realizing there's a lot of ways that you can do a lot of things, right? There's a lot of ways to skin a cat. And all that experience for me certainly paid off in my time here.
So what did you take from those guys that you sort of felt like were core beliefs to build a program?
Yeah, I mean, each one of them something different. I think working with Nick, he's like a pendulum. It's every day. It's steady Eddie. Like, this is what I do at 7:30 this time on this day. Like, the routine, the way he made routine, so important, it really stuck out to me. Like, Sun's going to come up in Tuscaloosa tomorrow. There's going to be a 7:30 staff meeting, and here's what we're going to go over in that staff meeting. And this is how we're going to evaluate post-game. I think from Kirby, I learned the ability to adapt, right? Like, okay, this is a weakness in our program. Let's quality control it. Let's figure out a drill that's going to make us better. And then let's figure out a scheme that we think will actually allow us to defend this play or play against it better. Mike, I learned a ton when it came to defending offensive football, a passion in recruiting. Coach Graham, same thing, like creating a vision for your program and setting some standards for what do you want this program to look like. He was great at speaking some things into existence and creating it and going to, okay, we don't have enough money for this. Okay, let's go raise it. There's just something I learned kind of each stop. Casey Keeler was the head coach. Now he's the head coach at Temple. He was the head coach at Sam Houston State when I was there. And he was unbelievable at letting people grow at what they were really good at, right? Like, this guy's really good at this. Don't get in his way. Let him go do it. And I'm going to hire great people. I'm going to support them. And you're going to find out, some things about your program in the process. So I feel like I learned something from each stop. And those lessons certainly paid off for me.
What you just said was really interesting because to me, you always hear these coaches and something, well, this is our system. This is what we do. And I'm like, okay, that's great. But I think at the end of the day, the best system is what do our players do best and how can we put them in a position to succeed, right? I feel like what you just said is the key to the whole thing. I don't have, this is what I want, do this. What do you do and how can I help you be better at it?
Right. Yeah, I feel like that's part of one of my early lessons as a coach is when you're a high school coach, you do that. You're like, okay, we can't run this anymore because we don't have that guy. We had him last year, but we're not recruiting. We're going to have this player this year, and we better do this differently. Like, this is what he's good at. You learn that in high school. As a high school coach, you learn that. When you get to college, so many people talk about their systems, like you said, and you don't realize this guy has a really unique skill set that you need to figure out how you can use. And I think that's been a weapon, that a lot of coaches miss that we definitely want to take advantage of. I think the most important trait now, more than ever for any head coach, is the ability to adapt. Adapt to the landscape of college football. Adapt to your personnel because it's going to change each year. Adapt to the schemes that exist in football. Adapt to recruiting models. Like, all those things, you better be willing to change because it's not the same as it was 5 years ago. It's not the same as it was last year. It's going to continue to change.
What was the biggest thing that you had to adapt to coming from Georgia and the SEC out to Eugene?
Yeah, there's a few things. One, that just there's not as many big people out here on the West Coast. You got to go find them, right? And when you find them, you got to like sink your hooks into them. Like, to win the games we want to win, you got to win in the trenches. And we've been able to build an offensive line, a defensive line with those same thoughts in mind. But you have to do a really great job there. I think the other piece, early in my role, is realizing that I can't do everything. I've got to let people, take jobs and do a great job in that job. Like, I can't wear every hat. The quicker we were able to delegate here and then people understand my expectation, right, I think the better we became, as an organization and the more we've grown whenever I was able to let, like I mentioned with Casey Keeler, let people do their job and do it really well.
Yeah. So what's been the biggest challenge for you this season? You guys are obviously off to a great start, and we'll get into your quarterback's play a little bit. When he's played, he's been great. He hasn't been on the field much because you haven't needed him to be. But what's been the thing that has taken you by surprise the most so far early in this season?
I think early on in January, February, we identified, okay, we just sent 10 players to the NFL. Yeah. There's going to be a lot of new faces. We're going to be missing guys with experience, and we're going to be missing guys with leadership traits. Like that was here. It's not here anymore. And I think this offseason, our players did an unbelievable job of saying, oh, I'll step up. I'll be that leader. Okay, I'll be the guy that plugged that hole. And I always think back to Mike Leach's speech in the Texas Tech locker room talking about, hey, Graham Harrell's not here no more, right? Michael Crabtree's not here anymore. He made that play. And I think our players really bought into that quickly, to the sense of like, okay, I'll be a leader. And leadership on our team doesn't have an age. It doesn't matter if you're a freshman or a senior. It's, hey, here's the standard at Oregon. Here's what we expect. And guys have gone and attacked that. And then same thing with experience. Like, the best way to get experience is go play. We played, over 70 players in our first game. We played over 80 players in our second game. I think last week we played 66 players in the game, right? So when you can play a lot of players and develop that experience quick and treat practice like a game, you're going to be able to develop your team.
Like you said, I've heard you say this a million times. If you're good enough, you're old enough. Right?
Amen. Yeah, if you're good enough, you're old enough. Absolutely.
So when things are rolling, and again, early season, sometimes they go a little differently than they do when you get in the heart of the conference battles. But when things are going so well at this point, like, how do you find something to say, okay, after the Oklahoma State game, well, we didn't do this right. Like, you're always looking for something, right? So
right.
What are you looking for in those situations to just let these kids know, hey, this was good enough for this game,
right,
but in 3 weeks or when we play at Penn State, it will not be good enough?
Yeah, we call it going to the doctor on Mondays, right? And we're trying to identify, like, before we get sick, can we take our medicine? Before we actually have to deal with being, bedridden, can we deal with it in advance and poke up, find the holes in our scheme, find the tendencies that maybe we've created, find the issues that'll become issues later on in the season and attack those now. We want to find it out before somebody else does. And we've done a really good job of that here in the past. But I think our guys have a growth mindset. They're not interested in being patted on the back. They want to hear, okay, where can I improve? We have guys that want to be coached, and it starts there. And then you have to have coaches that are really critical of themselves too. Like, when you have a game like Oklahoma State where it looks like everything goes right, and you have coordinators that can sit here and say, this was a really bad call. This is why it was a bad call. And they can learn from that lesson, even though outside looking in, it's like everything went right. What do you mean that was a bad call? It's like, well, it worked out because we have good players. But recognizing those moments, I think, is really important throughout your organization.
And, you mentioned it. Erosion is a big part of playing college football because you only get these guys at best sometimes for 2 or 3 years, right?
Right.
So you constantly have to have that turnover. Does that help you stay sharp? Because you can't sort of say, well, I got this guy. In the NFL, I got Patrick Mahomes. He's here for 8 years.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, it makes you continue to say, okay, our process really matters. This walkthrough rep is very important, right? Because it could be the difference in a win and a loss in the game. And I think retention's been a huge winner for us. This is the 4th year here for us now. We haven't lost a single starter to the transfer portal. We've been able to retain the players that have done a really good job on our roster. They enjoy being here. They feel like they're being developed. That's big. But then the development of young players, right, to be able to go step in and create bigger roles, or a guy like Kenyon Sadiq to maybe grow over time and grow in his role. That's been a big winner for us when you're able to keep players like that around and see them grow and develop throughout the program.
I don't know how many other college football programs can say what you just said. We don't lose players to the portal because everybody wants to play. But if you're not losing players to the portal, it also tells you that your players not only want to play, they want to play there and they want to play for you. What does that mean to you?
I mean, it's everything, right? And that requires some stuff. That requires support, right? I always tell our guys, I don't want you here for a discount. I want to be able to treat you fairly too. Like, NIL has to support that too. But, we've certainly lost some players. What we haven't lost we haven't lost stars on our team, and we haven't lost guys that are like really in position to have really big roles on our team. And that's huge. And I think that means you have to have honest conversations. You have to have guys that do have a growth mindset. And you don't always know that in recruiting, but you have to guys that are like, okay, I see the path for me to play, coach. I see where I'm going to grow. And that's paid, huge dividends for us. So I think it always says a couple things. One, guys enjoy being here. They feel like they're being developed. They like the people they're around, and they're taken care of. And if any of those things are missing, I think that's the recipe to find somebody go to another program.
Yeah. How much has NIL – look, and I've been saying this forever. I'm happy to see the kids who are creating a billion-dollar industry finally participate in the billion-dollar industry, right? Let's just be honest about it. But the NCAA went out of their way to say, you guys figure it out on your own.
Right.
Like, it's sort of become a wild, wild west scenario. And you mentioned, things changed. Like 2 years ago was so different than it is now. Do we need to find a way to regulate it in some way, shape, or form so it doesn't feel like we're doing this every 18 months and it's a completely new landscape?
Yeah, I think there's small steps that are happening in that direction. It certainly needs to happen, Trey. Like, But ultimately, I think what everyone needs to do is before we make a new rule, let's think of all the consequences because that's really what's happened here. We made a bunch of rules all at the same time, and then we're like, oh, well, let's change the rule. There's some things that are coming back. We just recently heard announced that, there's going to be one transfer portal window. I think that's better for the game, right? You're going to figure out who your team is sooner. It's still unfortunate that could occur during playing season. That's wild. And it goes back to me saying college football should end January 1st. It shouldn't end January 20th. But as long as we continue to think with the end in mind of what could happen if we make this a rule, I think that'll be a benefit for the game.
Yeah, it is a long season now, right? I mean, it goes much longer than it used to be. Obviously, the payoff for that is the payday and the exposure and the money that comes with those games and the expanded playoff. Having gone through the playoffs the way they were a year ago when you guys were the number one seed, it didn't feel like the way it was seeded for you was the way it should be for a number one seed.
Right.
What would you like to see changed about how that goes forward?
I mean, ultimately, for me, there's been a lot of people doing playoffs before it ever got to Division I football, right? The FCS playoffs.
William Jewell, baby, come on, let's go.
Exactly. There's a
lot
lot
of someone that's actually been on that campus, by the way.
There you go. God's country. Playoffs have existed for a long time. I think the mess in our sport is when people said, let's have playoffs, but let's still have bowl games. In playoffs, how should it work? There might be one team that has a bye, but the next week, guess what? You're playing. You're not going to have 6 byes. We'll go over 20 days where you don't have a game in college football before your first playoff game. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me. So ultimately, if the structure in college football matched what exists in the NFL playoffs, where the team that's the highest seed has a home game, that would create unbelievable atmospheres. We got to see a little picture of it last year with Ohio State and Tennessee and some of these home games that existed last year. But if I'm a Penn State fan last year and I get to go watch a game in Penn State, then I have to go to Arizona to watch a game and then Florida to watch a game, and then that doesn't make a lot of sense, right? Playoffs to me, Saturdays are for college football. You should play every Saturday. Army-Navy game, great. Does that mean nobody else can play football that day? I don't think so. Let's play a playoff game that weekend. Let's play another one the next Saturday. Let's play another one the next Saturday. And we get done a lot earlier. We play week 0 games now. Why not start the season a little bit earlier and wrap it up right there at the end of January?
Week -3 is coming, I guess, is the next thing.
Yeah.
It's interesting, Dan, that you say that because it reminds me of some things that Brian Rolapp, who's the new, whatever his title is as the head of the PGA Tour, he came from the NFL. Because, golf is like college football. It's the traditions are what make it, right? But if you're bound by those traditions, then you can't really improve. And you can't really change things in the way that they sometimes need to be changed dramatically. So how do you balance that as someone who grew up, like you said, Saturdays are for college football. That is what my DNA is. It's the way I was programmed. How do you balance that tradition with the idea we got to try some new things here just to keep this thing going because it's good for everybody?
Well, I think our game's never been more popular than it is right now. I mean, there's great attention, but we also got to realize, if we give a leash of a day, we gave up Saturdays, and who took it? The NFL, right? You get into December, and now the NFL's like, we'll play Fridays, Saturdays. So, you can't give that up. We're also the biggest developmental league for the NFL, right? We don't get $1 from the NFL, but we develop all the players for the NFL. So to me, we should take Saturdays back. And then we should follow a playoff model, like I said, where it's played, right after championship games and conferences are played. You should lean in, and the next week there should be that first round of the playoffs, and then the next weekend should be the second round, and so on. I do think that it could be unfair. One thing that Tony Petitti brought up is you got teams that are playing in a conference championship game. You got other teams that are at home getting healthy before they ever have to play their first playoff game. So should the third and fourth team be playing as well that weekend, and they're playing a battle, in that league, or the fifth and sixth team, or should we be playing SEC playing games? There's a lot of conversation on what that could look like, but ultimately, in my mind, the playoffs, that model's existed for a long time. Let's just copy paste. I used to make dodgeball tournaments when I was a PE teacher. That's what a playoff looks like. It's pretty simple. Oh, you never lost. Yeah, you're the number one seed. Here you go. Right. You play this team. That's ultimately my mindset.
It is crazy sometimes the gap between when you finish your last regular season game and when I can't remember. I think it was the Auburn-Oregon National Championship game. It was 30-something days before they actually played the title game. So I think, to your point, it does, not only for coaches but for players, being consistent, staying in that rhythm, like because you get away for it for 10 to 15 days and kids go home for a while for the holidays,
Right.
which I understand, and that's important. But suddenly you're not dealing with the same set of kids you had 10 days ago.
Oh, it's like starting fall camp over again. And we played in the Big Ten championship game last year, the first weekend.
That is still wild to
December.
me, though, that Oregon is in the Big Ten, but that's a separate issue.
That's different. But we play in that game, and then we play January 1st is the next time we touch the field. And that's not a necessarily a huge advantage to us, in that situation. But we'll play whatever cards we're dealt. We don't care. But could it be better? Absolutely.
All right, so let's talk about this year's team. And obviously, Dante Moore has been unbelievable. He's right up there already in Heisman discussions. What has impressed you about him that you hadn't expected?
Just the maturity. You're still talking about a relatively young player, but even the decision to come here, I think early on coming out of high school was like anxious to be on the field, anxious to go play. And then he goes and gets some of that experience and he looks around college football and he says, okay, this didn't work out exactly like I thought it would. Let me go somewhere where, one, I really want to be at, and two, I believe they're going to develop me and get me where I want to go. And they believe in me. And he came here and he watched a guy like Dillon Gabriel prepare every single week like he's supposed to. And he never really got the opportunity to learn that when he was at UCLA originally. And now you see that guy that learned those lessons from a guy like Dillon, that benefited from being able to watch, and is in a place where everybody believes in him. And now he's operating with unbelievable confidence, with really great control of our offense. And we put him in some tough situations last week, and he was able to execute at the highest level, which is, really impressive.
For the guys that have come before him, you mentioned Dillon Gabriel, and obviously Bo Nix finished up his career with you at Oregon. What do you think his potential is at the next level?
Yeah, Dante's a special player. He could be as good as we've had here. I mean, he has a unique skill set. He has the ability to throw the ball in every way you need to see it. Right? He can do the arm angles. He has the arm strength. He has the intelligence. So the way he's operating right now, if he continues to grow, like he could leave here and be one of the special ones that have played here at Oregon.
As we look at what's happening, first of all, for people that don't know, we sort of connected via Twitter of all things. I noticed you followed me, and so I just followed back, and we've kept the communication lines open. So some things do come well from social media. So it's not it's all negative crap, because this relationship was based on Twitter before it was X. But one of the things that was a lightning rod for you a couple of years ago was the whole Colorado game, and now you have Dillon Gabriel, your former quarterback, who is ahead of Shedeur Sanders on the Cleveland Browns depth chart. For those people that were Shedeur obsessed, for lack of a better term, this summer, what would you say to them about what Dillon's expectations are in the NFL and what he can achieve?
Yeah, Dillon's just a winner, man. He's just a winner. He's a guy that makes everybody in the room feel special. He can have a conversation with anybody. He takes his game really serious. He's going to put in the extra work, but he has a special confidence about himself, and he doesn't get distracted, and he just wants to go out there and have success. So anybody that gets to have a Dillon Gabriel on their team should feel really fortunate, just because of what you're adding to that locker room and how he's going to make the people feel in that locker room and how hard he'll work for them.
And then, of course, Bo has just exploded. His rookie year, the back half of his rookie year was unbelievable. He got off to a great start week one. They had that horrible loss to the Colts in that leverage call. But are you surprised at all by how well Bo has adapted to the NFL?
Not one bit. I think the last 2 years that we had Bo here at Oregon, like he really became something unbelievably special. He's always had the talent. He grew up in the home of a coach. He's still the guy that'll send you a question. Hey, coach, how are you guys running this coverage in the red area? Like, he wants to know how to attack. He's obsessed with the game. He's got an unbelievable wife and is an unbelievable person as well. Like, the common trait you're hearing about all these guys is they're really good people, and really good people that work really hard. Things come their way, and Bo's that guy.
He certainly is, and Sean Payton is thrilled. I talked to Sean after him. He's like, trust me, this is the guy. Because when he said that in the draft, this is the guy we wanted, people were like, okay, you bet. But he was the one he wanted. He knew. He knew. He absolutely knew. All right, you've talked about building a culture. When you hear a coach say, we need to build a culture here, what does that mean to you?
First part that sticks out to me is like player standards. Right? It doesn't matter necessarily what the coach wants to accomplish. It matters when that means so much to the players that they're going to call it out. Like, no, we're going to run we're gonna break out of the huddle. It's gonna look like this. No, we're gonna run the ball. It's gonna let now team run wasn't physical enough. Like I think back to moments last season where I told our guys, hey, we're gonna be in spiders today. We're not wearing shoulder pads. And our Tysheen Johnson stood up in front of the team and said, no, we didn't tackle well enough to do that, coach. We need to wear shoulder pads. It's like, oh, okay, player standards, right? Like when I think culture, I think of those moments, and just the way that they represent the program outside of the football facility, I think is really important as well. And our guys do a really good job of that.
Well, some of those things that sort of lead to that culture being effective: 22-1 at home at Autzen Stadium. Recruiting classes, which, sometimes I get a little carried away with how much people put on these recruiting classes. I mean, we can't get the NFL draft right, and they're 21 and 22 years old. But at 17 and 18, we're going to nail these classes. I feel like sometimes we put a little too much stock into this. But 13th in the nation, 9th in the nation, 3rd, and the 2026 class is shaping up. To me, those are things, as an outsider, that I see from someone watching, that those are stepping stones that indicate the culture you're talking about.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that want to be a part of what we're doing, and then when they get here, they want to stay, right? And I think that speaks volumes of what our players have created in this locker room, what our coaches have done an unbelievable job of in the direction of this program. I just got done doing a little facility tour outside of our building. We're building new facilities now. It's gonna be better than what we've had here before, and what we have here before is unbelievable. But we're gonna have a brand new indoor. We're gonna have a brand new setup, and those things is part of what makes Oregon so special is they continue to say, how can we elevate? How can we continue to improve? And that's the same thing. Those are the same kind of players that we want in our program.
Obviously, one of the big games coming up for you, and we don't want to jump ahead, but
But you want to jump ahead.
The whiteout game, Penn State, right? That. Right. I mean, those are the moments as a fan. I say that's the game I want to watch. That's what I want to see. So how do you deal with that, knowing it's on the schedule and trying not to get overhyped for something? Because that's one of those games where, it's like Troy Aikman when he said, when he went to his first Soap, was that as soon as I heard the national anthem, I almost passed out. I was so fired up, like how do you regulate that, but knowing, hey, this is a big frickin' deal?
Yeah, we're going to get to playing some big games this year. I think the biggest part for us right now is to focus on today, right? And then tomorrow we'll wake up and we'll focus on tomorrow. And our guys have done a really good job of that. I've actually shown some clips of our players speaking, to media, and how they've done such a wonderful job of focusing on the right now. So we have to focus on the right now, and then we get to celebrate moments like that. And it's always about playing the game, not the occasion, when you get in games like that. But as a coach, am I excited to, be at a whiteout game? Yeah, this will be my first one. We were really excited last year to go into the big house, right? And when you get to experience things like that, that's part of what makes the Big Ten so special, to get to go play in those environments. It's part of what makes this league fun. But we're not there yet. We got to worry about Oregon State before we get to touch that.
Yeah. So, right after the playoff last year, I texted you and you said, thanks, I just wasn't good enough. What did you take, which I respected, by the way, taking ownership of that right away, even though I thought, you guys were fine.
Not in the first quarter.
Not in the first quarter. Other than that, everything turned out okay. Yeah. What did you take away from that will help you guys, assuming you get into the playoff, when it certainly looks like we're headed that way? But what will you take away from the experience last year that will benefit you if we get there again?
I just got done having this conversation with Dante earlier today. We always meet and kind of talk through game plan. I talk about how much I've learned from losses. Like how losses have been really shaped who I am, and I think back to big losses. And when I was at Georgia, we lost to Florida in a game that I was just heartbroken because I thought I did a really bad job of having our defense ready that day. I think back to the SEC championship game that we lost to Alabama, right? We go on later on that year to win the national championship. Think about my first loss here as a coach when I just got to Oregon. We had to go play Georgia for game one, and we're not even off the field, and the band's taking the field, and just everything kind of went wrong. And how many lessons I learned, and just like that last year, we had one loss, but it was the last one, and we learned some big lessons, like little things that we want to make sure that we have variables for, coverage adjustments, ways that we can stay on schedule, more aggressive plays on from my end when we're in games like that and moments like that. We got to be aggressive to give ourselves a chance, especially when you start off in the wrong end, and then also just the acknowledgement that sometimes it's not your day, and that just happens. So we took a lot from that game, and Ohio State was humming, man. They Unbelievable season. Great job by Coach Day. Some great players on that team. But I think we definitely learned from that moment, and we'll see what it looks like if we get that opportunity again.
Boy, you're not kidding. Some days it's not your day. Yesterday on 16, I hit the pin, and it ricocheted 30 yards left into the frickin' hazard. I'm like, really?
But
what else am I supposed to do? Like, what else am I supposed to do? I get it. All right, listen, I would be remiss if I didn't do this, and he doesn't know I'm going to do this, but my business partner and our producer are both Oregon graduates. When I told Duncan that we were getting you on the show, I don't think he could contain himself. He watched from his honeymoon in Rome up at 4 a.m., the only loss at Autzen Stadium in your career. So, Duncan, unmute yourself, buddy. Come on. This is your opportunity. We're going to give you the
what's
stage.
up, brother?
Don't screw it up, Duncan. You get to ask him a question.
Okay. I love it. Coach. Thanks so much for being on. I'm a proud 2019 graduate. I got my diploma right there. So just have absolutely loved the Lanning era so far. After I left Oregon, I spent a year with the Kansas City Chiefs, and then a year under Coach Elko at Duke, both in creative content roles. So I knew if I got a chance to ask you a question, I had to ask about Ducks versus them. It's just been an absolute amazing video series. Scott Anderson and his team have done a great job, and I'm sure the fan base has loved it. So I'm curious, at what point in your career, that's not really the first thing you think about as a coach. Did you realize how important brand building and storytelling was for both, brand recognition as well as recruiting?
Yeah, I think for us, one, you mentioned it, we have an unbelievable group. Like Scott and his group and Steve Pohl, the guys that work for us, they're so creative. And sometimes it kind of goes back, like this stuff is mentioned in Shoe Dog a lot, where, Phil talks about, you want to figure out how good somebody is at something, just tell them go do it, and then let's see what they come up with, and don't get in the way. And I think that's what early on with Scott and his staff, like we figured out, it's like, hey man, you can film whatever you want, but I'll tell you if I don't want it in there, and that means I don't want it in there. So like I want to watch it, and I'll see it afterwards. But what it's done is given people a glimpse into our program, and it's created some really unique, opportunities for people to see what's it like to be a player at the University of Oregon, what's it like to be a coach, what's it like to be a fan, and they've done an unbelievable job telling great stories about the University of Oregon, and a lot of it just starts with, hey, you got access, go do it, go do it, and let's see what you come up with. And they've killed it. They've done a really good job, and it's made some really cool content for our team.
Yeah, allowing the radio calls from the Utah game 2 years ago was just incredible, and all that stuff. But okay, my final follow up.
He's got a follow up. He's got a follow up. Okay, we're in the White House press room right now.
I know that you've said multiple times you're a PE major, so I'm curious, do you come up with these themes by yourself? The grass is damn green, the FIBU, the ante-up, like, come on, is someone helping you?
I pull something from everywhere now. So like I've got a great team, but I'm not, before I go into a press conference, I'm not like, all right, what one-liners do we got today? Like some of it is just like, those are things we say in our program, right? Those are things that exist for us, and we've probably been lucky on a few of them. But those are things that we say constantly, and I guess every once in a while it creates maybe a viral moment or an opportunity for somebody else to take it. What I'll say is we haven't patented any of it. So that shirt you're wearing looks really cool, but somebody else made money on it, not us. But I love it. I love that Oregon is a place that, they take those things, they take a word, they take a phrase, and they run with it. And it's become pretty cool here. We've got you talk about culture within our team. We have a culture within our fan base in this place, yourself included, Duncan, that love this place so much, and it makes you light up. It makes you realize that we represent more than just, a few hours on a Saturday. It's bigger than that, and that's what makes this pretty cool.
Awesome.
All right, Duncan, get out of here.
Thanks for
get
your
out
time.
of here.
Thanks for your time. Bye.
Get out of here. Yeah, he had no idea we were doing that. So thanks for making his day for sure. And by the way, the reason those sayings that you come up with resonate because they weren't pre-planned. It wasn't staged. It's organic. Right. You know what I mean? Like I think that's the truth part of it. I think that's the real part of it that people see. It's not a BS marketing campaign. It's just, hey, this is who we are. This is how we operate.
Right. Yeah. True.
Right. Well, listen, man, I appreciate your time. It's been fun watching you ascend and all the things and that you've been able to do at Oregon. And again, for the entire fan base, he's not going anywhere. Okay,
no,
he's not going anywhere. He'll
Trey,
be there for a while.
Man. I'm a huge fan.
Pleasure. Real
Yeah,
pleasure,
absolutely.
man.
Thank you.
We'll catch up soon, all right?
Sounds good. Have a good one.
You too, bud. Once again, thanks to Dan Lanning for joining us. Always good to catch up with him, and we'll see what happens as they get ready for that whiteout game at Penn State this weekend. It is going to be electric. Thanks for watching Straight Facts Homie or listening to it wherever you get your podcasts. If you like what you hear, click the subscribe button. And if you're watching on YouTube, hit the like and subscribe, and tell your friends, tell your enemies, tell people you don't care about. Just tell them they'll like the show too. We'll see you next time.